Over a year and a half ago, I bought my Z. Like everyone else with the new project car, I had big plans. The Z was my canvas to create with, and I went right to it. I started by pulling out flares and putting them on with side skirts, and then attempted to create my own front bumper, which did not go well. I installed air suspension on a car for the first time, and then set out to accomplish my biggest task that I had ever attempted, creating a fully custom addition to the car. Unfortunately, this is when things went downhill. I had to let the car sit outside for one night, and of course it rained. The rain got into the cracks of my unfinished work and completely ruined it. At this point, I completely lost motivation to work on the car. I decided to plastic dip the car, and that was going to be the stopping point, and then at that point, I left the car sit. I drove the car every now and then, but honestly, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. The Zs are cool, don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel the same as when I drove my Supra, the Miata, or even the Mustang. Then, one time when driving, it blew a tire, and that's where we pick up today. This is what I'm working with. Luckily the tire didn't break off the wheel completely, so there's no rash on the inside of the wheel that would cause me a huge hiccup. But as you can tell, it is pretty mangled. First thing that I needed to do was to remove the flare. Although the air suspension was fully filled on the front, the tire had bulged up quite a bit, so not removing the flare would make this more of a pain than it already is. After that was jacking up the car and removing the wheel itself. As you can see, the tire is pretty mangled, but on the plus side, all that mangle that you see on the top of the wheel is tire, so the wheel itself was protected like I mentioned. From there I took the tire up to Wilsonville Jeep Ram and got it changed out for a fresh one. With the tire back on, there was only one more thing that I wanted to address with the car. Anytime you lower a car, your camber angle will change, so when the Z was lowered, it caused there to be more negative camber than factory. Although it looked pretty cool, it did cause uneven tire wear, which is something that I didn't want. Luckily for me, my good friends over at Max Speeding Rods hooked me up with adjustable rear control arms for the Nissan that would help fix this issue. Max Beating Rods has all sorts of aftermarket parts for your car, ranging from suspension to turbos. The name may seem familiar as they did supply the coolant hoses for the Miata back when we did the engine swap, and they helped tremendously. So if you're in need of some new parts, go on over and check them out, and while you're there, use the code PHIL15 for 15% off your order. Replacing the control arms are pretty simple. Start off by jacking up the car and putting a stand underneath to make sure that it doesn't fall while you're working, and then from there remove the wheel to gain access to the whole suspension assembly. I also removed the flare to gain some more access for myself, but this step won't cause any issues if you're not running a wide body kit on your car. There are 6 total bolts that we need to take off to get the control arm out. There are 4 mounting the control arm mount to the body and then 2 connecting the control arm itself. I found that the easiest way to take off the control arm mounts is to use extensions and wobbly bits. As for the control arm itself, you need a 17mm wrench and then another 17mm socket with a wobbly bit on the end as well to get it off. Don't worry about disconnecting the control arm from the control arm mount until it's out of the car, because if you try to do it on the inside you just don't have the space to, and since we're taking the whole assembly out, it's just so much easier to do it then. So as I mentioned before, these new control arms are adjustable. We're able to adjust for more negative or positive camber, and in this case we want more positive camber because the car has too much negative camber at the moment. So we're going to be adjusting this out 1 centimeter on the control arm. Now we do want to keep in mind that it isn't a direct adjustment from the control arm length to the amount of the top of the tire moving, since the pivot point is near to the center. If you're not sure how much you should adjust, always start with small adjustments and you could come back and change it later. But once you do have it adjusted, go ahead and just reinstall the exact opposite way of taking it out, same as any other installation. So once we have the control arm all back in, just reconnect the wheel and then go to the other side of the car, do the other wheel in the exact same way you did the first. And this marks the end of the Z. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I lost motivation to work on the car. When I had the Supra, or with the Miata or Mustang, I always had the desire to go out and work on them, to make them better. I knew that even in the days where I wasn't feeling like putting in work, it was still worth it. I could grind away at the seemingly insurmountable tasks that I had taken on, knowing that the end goal would be so worth it. But with the Z, I just didn't see that. The car was only ever an experiment, something to test and practice new skills on. I learned a lot, and that's for sure, but I really didn't want to hold on to the car for any longer. Some of you may have seen it, but I put the car for sale, and now it's gone. Off to a new home, to an owner who will love it. But is this the end? Heck no.